Well, good afternoon. I'm back again for my weekly video. I've got Quincy with me today. He's back by popular demand. I heard that a lot of people wanted him to be in the video again, so here he is. This week it's a little bit different because usually I do these either Sunday night or Monday morning, but I decided to wait until this evening, which is Monday evening, because guess what? Today's the 15th, which means that I got my hair cut. And so I wanted to do this video after my haircut. A number of things from this week. Actually, it was a week where there were a lot of more external meetings and external things going on than internally within the university. You know, one of the meetings that I attended was the advisory council to the director of the NIH. And a couple of things that are relevant to the COVID-19 and to the Floyd George murder that I just want to relay to you. One, in terms of the COVID-19, I think everybody understands that it's had a disproportionate impact on the African American community. One of the things the NIH is doing is they're putting a lot of money toward research in the African American community related to COVID-19. I was very happy to see that. It's a program called RADXUP. The NIH likes to use a lot of these initials all the time. They think it's easier to remember, but personally I think it's harder. RAD, I think, stands for Rapid Accelerational Diagnostics, something like that. And UP is Underrepresented Populations. So $500 million is going to go toward research in these diagnostics for underrepresented populations. That's a lot of money. And the announcement came out, a week or so ago, but it was mentioned as a point of information to the advisory council during the meeting this past week on Thursday. The other thing that I learned at the NIH Advisory Council meeting is that they're going to be doing some pool testing for the coronavirus. Pool testing is a technique where you can pool your samples and do one batch run. So in other words, I think you can do up to like 25 samples with one run. That means that you can actually do many more samples than if you had to do each individually. So it's got me to thinking that, well, maybe we can do like maybe a whole floor of one of our residency housing units at a time, and thereby do it much more frequently. But anyway, I just emailed the chair of our public health committee for Restart to ask her about this, to see if the Restart committee could discuss this as a potential for us. There may be some reasons why we don't want to do it, I don't know, but I just thought it was interesting. It was just something else that I learned in terms of what the NIH is doing. The other thing that I did it was actually this weekend, just yesterday, in fact, Sunday, was I attended virtually a high school graduation. It was seniors from all over the city, actually, from different high schools. I got the sense, although I don't know this for a fact, I got the sense that most of these were college-going seniors. They seemed to be, very poised and really knew what they wanted to do in life. There was one in particular who spoke. Her name was Zaria Akeem. She's going to go to Tufts this next year as a pre-med major. I thought she was articulate, passionate in what she wants to do, and I think she's going to one day become a great doctor. But the reason why I mention this is I am just so encouraged by young people today as I continue to see what's going on nationally with the protests and the continued focus on it. I realized that, as I mentioned before, it's led predominantly by younger people. They have a passion, they've got a drive, they have a sense of justice that gives me hope for the future. Let me say a few words about books before I close. So this is The World by Richard Haas. I mentioned that I had been reading that. I finished it, but there was this one passage that I wanted to read, which I thought was just fascinating. Now remember that the coronavirus, the pandemic, just started a few months ago. This book had to have been published before that. But he writes in one of the chapters about global health, after talking about some of the Zika and Ebola and some other respiratory diseases that we've had over the past decade. He says, at the same time, a large-scale global epidemic, a pandemic, cannot be discounted. Vaccines cannot anticipate specific strains of flu, and it is possible that a particularly virulent form could emerge one season and quickly go global. By the time the influenza virus had been identified, it likely would have spread and taken root. During the Spanish flu pandemic a century ago, it is estimated that at least 50 million people died. Literally, hundreds of millions, especially the young and the old, will be at severe risk today from the outbreak of a virulent form of flu, and the global economy could suffer a major blow because travel will be interrupted, health systems overloaded, and people discouraged from going to work or anywhere where they could come into contact with people who might be contagious. In the realm of contagious diseases, little stays local for long. I thought this was such a prescient passage that I want to share with you. Well, in terms of my next book, I'm debating between two. I'm going to read them both, but I can't decide yet which one I'm going to read first. So I'm going to tell you about both of them. The first one is a book called The Burden, African Americans and the Enduring Impact of Slavery. And it's written by Rochelle Riley, who many of you may recognize because she was a columnist for the Free Press here in Detroit. And it's published by our own Wayne University Press. I thought that particularly in this time right now with what we're going through, what the country is going through, that this might be a particularly compelling book. But plus it's Rochelle and I like her and it's local. The second book is from another local person, actually a professor emeritus here at Wayne State, Guy Stern, called Invisible Ink, a memoir. I don't know much about this book. I just received it today, but I do know that he was a Holocaust survivor and that he was an interrogator of Nazis once he survived the Holocaust and was in his early part of his career. I thought this would be a fascinating book also just because of the times we're in and what happened with the Holocaust and the Jewish population is something that we can never forget. It's relevant now as it ever has been, and so I thought that this would also be a great book, also published by our own Wayne University Press. So I may take a break next week, I'm not sure, and you may not see me for a couple of weeks because I want to make sure that when I come back I have some new news to tell you. But the good news is that by then I will be able to give you an update on these two books. Until then, stay safe and warrior strong.